Please run away from your husband right now. The truth is,
I was astonished by the horrifying truth that Dr. Johnson had just revealed. All I did today was bring my sick husband for his regular checkup. And now I'm being told this by the doctor. I was completely freaking out.
Listen, Mrs. Simmons, you might be in danger. You have to do something about it.
Dr. Johnson's eyes didn't look like he was joking. He was serious. Feeling totally swamped by the situation, I couldn't help but gulp nervously. I used to pity my sick husband, but now, different emotions were welling up inside of me. Oh, okay, I understand. Thank you for telling me. I need to do something, anything. My name is Eli Simmons, and I'm 53 years old. I have been working as a full-time employee at a major pharmaceutical company for 30 years. Since I have been working at the same company for so long, the workplace feels as comfortable as home. There are hardly any people of my age who continue to work full-time, and I feel that everyone respects me. The reason why I continue to work as a full-time employee at my age is that I was single until 3 years ago. 3 years ago, my department manager, Smith, jokingly said to me,
Alice, you're not getting married, are you?
Looking back, it might be considered harassment, but I wasn't offended because I was at a certain age. Plus, Smith was my colleague, so we used to joke with each other. In fact, he was also single, and the two of us, being single, deepened our bond. Well, I'm looking.
Haga, I see. My bad, my bad. Let's both try our best in finding a partner.
Okay. Although I shrugged off his comment casually, I had a thing going on with the guy, and it was going pretty well, but it was a bit of a secret. That man is now my husband, Michael. He is 5 years older than me, and he had been married once a long time ago, but had since divorced. Michael and I met through a marriage consultation office. We both didn't want children, and we're looking for partners to spend the rest of our lives with leisurely. Until we officially got married, we decided to keep it a secret from those around us. So, even when the manager teased me about marriage, I just gently responded. A few months later, I happily married Michael. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, so all we had to do was submit the marriage registration form to the city hall. I was taken aback at how easy marriage registration process was compared to my imagination.
Looking forward to our life together.
I am too. Michael is a salaried worker at a factory. And to put it bluntly, I was making more money annually than he was. It seems that he started working at his current factory after graduating from high school. I was raised in an orphanage and had a strong desire to become an independent adult, so I didn't want to give up my position as a regular employee at the pharmaceutical company. Therefore, even after getting married, I decided to continue working for my current company. I reported my marriage to Michael to Smith right away. He congratulated me, saying,
Oh, congratulations.
However, his face seemed somewhat complicated. Maybe he felt lonely because I, his single companion, got married before he did. When I teased him about it, he strongly replied,
Don't be silly.
So I decided to leave it at that. As for me, I was thrilled about starting my new life with Michael. It had been a while since I felt this excited. I was imagining a bright future. Little did I know, the actual future wasn't as dazzling as I expected it to be. Our newlywed life passed by ordinarily. Although we got married, my lifestyle hardly changed since I was also working. The only difference was that we bought a cheap used car in the countryside, and our living area became more rural. I started commuting by car instead of by bus, using the car I originally owned. Michael didn't have a car to begin with, so we shared mine. About a year after we got married, shadows began to loom over our once smooth-sailing married life. Is it depression?
Yes. Based on what I heard from Michael, it is certain that he is in at least a depressive state. It's a mental issue.
Come to think of it, he had been acting strange for a while. He looked pretty down in the morning, and he hardly touched more than half of his breakfast. He was often spacing out, mixing up ketchup with salt, wearing mismatched socks. I thought he might have something on his mind, but these behaviors continued to happen every day. It seemed like he was out of it at work too. He wasn't a talkative person to begin with, but I felt that he had become even quieter. I liked that Michael was not very chatty and was a solid person, but it's a different story when he becomes too quiet. Although we live together, it feels like I'm living by myself now. I felt really lonely experiencing that feeling. From these slight changes, I thought he might have some kind of mental illness, so I took him to a nearby psychosomatic medicine clinic, and he was diagnosed with depression. I knew a bit about depression, so when I learned that my husband had been depressed, it felt like everything in front of me turned dark.
The best treatment for depression is to eliminate the root cause in the first place. Do you have any idea what might have caused his depression?
I have no clue. He's been working at the same factory for decades, so it's hard to imagine he'd suddenly become depressed now. And I haven't heard anything about him changing departments. If there has been any change, I think it's because he married me.
I see. But you haven't been doing anything at home that could be pressuring your husband, right?
Not at all. We were living a happy life together. I really don't know what went wrong.
I see. Well, if anything comes up, please feel free to come back anytime. Let's find out what works for him.
Yes. Thank you so much. After that, we revisited the clinic several times, but we couldn't figure out the cause of Michael's depression, and his symptoms did not improve. In fact, his condition worsened day by day. On bad days, as soon as he woke up, he'd crawl back into bed saying,
My head's killing me.
or he would take several days off work. He stopped eating well, and he visibly lost weight. In the end, he had no choice but to take a leave of absence from work. However, since there was no prospect of him being able to return, he eventually had to quit the job.
I'm sorry. I've caused you so much trouble.
It's okay. Believe it or not, I actually enjoy working. Michael felt very guilty about leaving all the work to me. I just prayed for his quick recovery and went off to work. I couldn't stand to see Michael in such a state. It was heartbreaking. When he was at home, I couldn't help but worry about him while I was at work. This is because, at one point, he went out on his own, wandered around like a dementia patient, and couldn't find his way home. When I asked him about it, he said he couldn't remember where our house was. I started to wonder if he might be suffering from both depression and dementia. This thought only added to my stress.
Alice, are you doing okay recently? It seems like your husband's condition hasn't been great.
No, he's not getting any better.
I see. You should take a break too. Here, take this.
What Smith handed me was a bottle of energy drink. I gratefully accepted it and drank it on the spot. It made me feel a bit better. Thank you so much.
No problem. We're all in this together.
I almost broke down in tears at his words. I had been trying so hard to support Michael, but it seemed like I had been accumulating stress without realizing it. I thought to myself that I needed to stay strong, or I might collapse too. So, I focused on my work every day. 2 years have passed since then. This year marks our third wedding anniversary. Michael's condition has remained the same, only getting worse. There was no sign of recovery in sight. One day, when I was about to leave the house for my work, I noticed that the car, which was supposed to be parked next to the entrance, was gone. I blinked several times, thinking it was strange, but the car was nowhere to be found. Ever since Michael was diagnosed with depression, I have been the only one driving the car, so if the car is gone, it means that I must have moved it somewhere. However, I haven't gone out anywhere since I came back home yesterday. In other words, it's impossible for the car to not be at home. Honey, do you know where the car went? I asked Michael anxiously.
I don't know. I think it was there when I came back home yesterday.
He responded indifferently. I remember that while I was at work yesterday, Michael went out, and he came back home an hour after I did. He was advised by the doctor to take walks or go running for a change of pace, so I thought he must have gone running yesterday. If the car was here when Michael came back, it means that the car went missing sometime between last night and this morning. While my mind was filled with question marks, I decided to take the bus and train to work for the day. Since it wasn't my usual route, I ended up running about 10 minutes late, but Smith was convinced when I explained the situation, saying,
That's quite unfortunate. But where could the car have gone? Didn't your husband take it somewhere?
"No way." He said the car was there when he came back home. Also, he's been steering clear of driving ever since he got sick. It's too dangerous.
I see.
He seemed to suspect that Michael knew something about it, but I knew very well how much Michael's mood swings affected his everyday life, and how he made careless mistakes frequently. So, I couldn't believe that Michael had done something with the car. After work, I immediately contacted the police and filed a stolen vehicle report. I hoped the car would be found soon, but I couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety that it might never return. There were other strange things happening too. On my payday, I went to the bank to withdraw some money and update my bank book, only to find out that my balance was zero. We have a joint account as a couple, but the bank book I checked was indeed my personal one. When I checked the joint account as well, the balance was somehow zero too. I was puzzled and thought, what's going on? Since Michael had access to the joint account, I figured he must have withdrawn the money. However, I had not told Michael about my personal account, and there's no way he could know the PIN. Despite that, all the savings were gone. I felt a chill run down my spine because of these incomprehensible events. When I got home, I immediately asked Michael about it. Have you withdrawn any money from our joint account recently?
What are you talking about?
The balance is gone. Do you know anything about it? Michael seems extremely suspicious, but it's still too early to conclude that he's the culprit. I didn't want to put any psychological stress on him since he's suffering from depression.
I have no idea. I've left the management of our household finances to Elise, so I really don't know anything.
While looking at the ceiling, Michael spoke as if his mind was elsewhere. Sometimes, he gets into this kind of daze, which I thought was surely due to his illness. In such a state, could Michael really withdraw the money? I was planning to consult the police about this matter as well. After all, since then, neither the stolen car nor the money has been found. Losing the car was a shock, but the reality of having no money made me feel desperate. If only I had parents to rely on during times like these, I could have asked to borrow some money. Unfortunately, I grew up in an orphanage and don't know any of the parents. All I have is a husband who developed depression. I was feeling very cornered, overwhelmed with anxiety and loneliness. It was just yesterday that I was advised to change Michael's hospital. The psychiatric clinic we had been visiting was a small community practice, and they said there was a limit to the treatment they could provide. They recommended a general hospital and even wrote a letter of referral for us. We decided to visit the general hospital for a regular checkup. To get there, we took a taxi to the hospital. It was our first time visiting a general hospital, so I was somewhat nervous. However, Michael kept being silently as usual. As we reached the hospital, I took a deep breath and stepped inside. I submitted the referral letter at the reception and waited for Michael's name to be called. Being a general hospital, there were many other patients waiting at the reception. I thought to myself that it might take a while. After about an hour of waiting, Michael's name was finally called. He went inside the consultation room. While waiting, I decided to read a book. However, as soon as Michael entered the consultation room, a nurse called out to me.
Excuse me, are you Mrs. Simmons?
Yes, I am.
The doctor would like to talk to you. Could you please follow me?
Yes, sure. I often received explanations about Michael's illness, so I figured it would be something along those lines this time as well. I followed the nurse, feeling a bit nervous. I was taken to a different room from the consultation room and stepped inside.
I apologize for calling you in. Please have a seat over there.
My first impression was that he was a very humble doctor, appearing to be about 10 years older than me. His hair was graying and had a beard. He seemed like a kind person. Is this about my husband's condition? I took the initiative to ask the doctor. He nodded deeply. I knew it. Is it quite bad? I braced myself for the words that would come next from the doctor.
I'm really sorry to bring this up so suddenly, and I hope I'm not making you uncomfortable, but I need to be straightforward with you.
As he spoke, I tensed up, wondering what this was all about.
You need to get away from your husband right now. The truth is, he was arrested for fraud 13 years ago.
What? I was shocked by the doctor's horrifying words. I had only brought my sick husband for his routine checkup today. Why was I being told something like this by the doctor? My mind was in a state of panic.
I was conducting his routine checkup just now, and something about his face seemed familiar during the examination. His responses during the consultation made me doubt whether he really has depression. I've been a psychiatrist for about 10 years, and I've seen a lot of patients in my career. So I believe he is not depressed. He is just pretending to be. I remembered seeing and treating him before. I used to be a surgeon until 10 years ago. Exactly 13 years ago, a patient was brought in with a deep cut in his right leg, and I was the one who treated him. Today, I saw a large scar on your husband's right leg, and I realized he was the patient I had treated back then.
I see. So that's what happened. Surely, Michael did have a large scar on his right leg. I had never asked about it, and Michael never brought it up himself. Meeting the doctor who treated him today was just unbelievably coincidental.
Back then, he said he got injured during an argument with his wife. Later, I found out that the argument was caused because he had defrauded his ex-wife.
Defrauded?
Yes. Apparently, he had stolen her designer goods and money. Worse, he pretended to have dementia.
Dementia?
Yes, just like the current situation. He pretends to be ill, lets his wife let her guard down, and then commits fraud. It's truly despicable behavior.
The revelation was so shocking that I didn't even know what to say. Michael had a criminal record, and he had been arrested before. Moreover, his methods seemed familiar. If I had parents, they might have checked his background, but I was so overjoyed to have found a partner at my age that I didn't bother to check his past.
Is everything okay? There might be danger approaching Michael Simmons. It would be best to take some kind of action quickly.
The doctor looked straight into my eyes with a serious gaze. There was no way this was a joke. Being called out specifically for this, I realized that I was being deceived by Michael. Knowing this, I became restless. Well, I understand. Thank you for telling me. Walking alongside Michael as we left the doctor's office, I was desperately thinking of a plan. I needed to do something, anything. Then, I decided to install surveillance cameras around the house and monitor Michael while I was away. A week later, I noticed that a watch and a bag were missing. So I checked the camera recordings. The footage showed Michael leaving the house with the bag and watch. About 2 hours later, Michael returned, took a stack of bills out of an envelope he was holding, and had a suspicious and smug look on his face. He didn't seem like a patient suffering from depression at all. At that moment, I was certain Michael had been stealing from me, taking my car and my savings. I can't believe it was Michael. It was an unbelievable sight, but the evidence right in front of my eyes was undeniable. Michael had lied to me, deceived me. He had taken money and valuable items from me, and acted as if nothing had happened. Pretending to be a patient, I couldn't forgive him. What was the point of working and taking care of Michael? I couldn't just get a divorce like it was nothing. That wouldn't satisfy me. Of course, we had to break up, but I wanted to make Michael reflect on his actions. I wanted him to atone for deceiving me and repaying my kindness with malice. While filled with various emotions and on the verge of tears, I went to get the divorce papers and filled out all the necessary information. The next day, as usual, I told him, I'm going out for a bit, and headed to the police station. I took a day off from work the previous day. It was an emergency situation. My leave request for the next day was also accepted when I explained it to my company. My husband has been deceiving me and stealing money from me. I showed the police the recorded footage. They said it was hard to make a judgment based just on the recording. So they checked with the pawn shop where they thought Michael had sold the stolen items. They also looked for my missing car and found out that it was being sold as a used car. It was also confirmed that Michael was the one who had withdrawn money from my bank account. On top of that, it was revealed that his depression was also a lie. As Michael's web of lies quickly unraveled, I felt a mixture of relief, sadness, and indescribable emotions.
Michael Simmons has a criminal record. We will obtain a warrant right away and head to your house.
Yes, please. Thank you. What followed was a whirlwind of events. I went back home with the police officers. The time was just past 3 p.m. I'm back. Although I was supposed to be at work, I came back during the day. This left Michael surprised, saying,
Huh?
He seemed to notice the police officers behind me, as his eyes widened in shock.
What's going on, Alice?
Let's get a divorce. I presented the divorce papers that I had kept in my bag. Normally, one's eyes would go to the divorce papers, but Michael kept looking at the face of the police officers.
Michael Simmons, you are under arrest for fraud.
As the police officer, showing his badge, approached, Michael stepped back and raised his voice.
What the hell?
You've been lying to me, haven't you? You weren't really suffering from depression, were you?
Pal, what are you talking about? I've been going to the hospital for 2 years because of my depression.
Depression is a mental thing, so it's hard to judge whether it's true or false. But I was told by a doctor at a general hospital that I visited for the first time the other day. You had previously pretended to have dementia to deceive your ex-wife, hadn't you? That doctor said he had treated your injuries before. Besides, he doubted your responses were those of a depression patient.
That's just someone talking nonsense. I am truly suffering from depression. It's cruel to suddenly abandon me.
Michael, not fazed by the police, kept making excuses. He must be used to deceiving people. Perhaps it was because he had dealt with the police before, but he didn't seem fazed at all.
Besides, where is the proof that I committed fraud? You don't have any.
The evidence is right here.
Why? How could you take this without permission? That's a crime, isn't it?
Michael shouted, trembling. It was strange in the first place for him to ask for evidence in front of the police. They were arresting him because they had gathered evidence. In this sense, Michael was careless. Look, for 3 years, you deceived me, stole my car and money, and not only that, you trampled on my kindness. And now you're blaming me while turning a blind eye to your own crimes. Do you even have any common sense, Michael?
But I think it's your fault for being deceived. If you hadn't been deceived by me in the first place, none of this would have happened. Stupid woman.
Despite everything I did for him, Michael returned my kindness with betrayal and kept insulting me until the end. Hearing his words, the string of patience in my heart finally snapped. Who do you think I've been working so hard for all this time? I was doing my best because I wanted you to get better as soon as possible. And after all that, you think you can just get away with treating me so horribly? I'm going to hire a lawyer, and of course I'm going to ask for alimony from you. So you better go to the police station right away. You scumbag. My voice was so loud and angry that even the police officers were taken aback and widened their eyes. Thus it made sense when Michael lost his nerve right then and there. The police showed no mercy as they handcuffed the trembling Michael. Unable to move, Michael finally seemed to resign himself to his fate, hanging his head low and clicking his tongue in frustration as the police led him away, his shoulder in a tight grip. I watched the scene unfold as if it had nothing to do with me. From the moment the doctor advised me to run away from Michael, nothing felt real. Even as I watched Michael being taken away by the police, I felt as if I was in a dream. Now, I can finally go back to my life before marriage. Although I felt relieved that I didn't have to live the rest of my life as Michael's slave, there was also a sense of loneliness. It had taken me over 50 years to finally get married, so the thought of being alone again left me feeling despondent. 2 months later, Michael and I were officially divorced. The divorce was a bit delayed due to Michael's arrest, but by the time it was finalized, my mind had completely cooled off, allowing me to calmly accept everything that had happened to Michael and me. I don't know how long Michael's prison sentence will be, but since this is his second arrest, his punishment will likely be more severe than usual. I just hope he truly reflects on his actions and doesn't make the same mistakes again. In the end, marriage was just an illusion for me. I sighed heavily during lunch at work as I ate the packed lunch I had bought. That's when my boss, Smith, who had bought hot dog from the grocery store, sat down next to me.
Is that so? I think you'd be fine if you were with me.
His comment was so casual that I almost didn't catch the significance of his words. I was about to questioning, but then the meaning of his words hit me, and I could feel my ears getting hot. Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm always serious.
He said it so smoothly, I was at a loss for words, and stopped eating.
Just keep it in the back of your mind, will you?
Smith, who had finished his hot dog at some point, swiftly went back to work. I was left stunned, continuing to eat my lunch in a daze. I had never considered being in that kind of relationship with him, but I knew that he had always been concerned about me. He was reliable, and he had a stable income. While I knew it was rude to think about such things, I couldn't help but feel a warmth inside me. Maybe I'll ask him out for a meal after work today. It might be a good time to start anew.